Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We are back. Thank you so much for all the nice messages, the emails, the comments. You've been inundated. It's amazing. However, this sadly will be the final episode of the Crash MotoGP podcast. Unfortunately, due to circumstances way beyond our control, this will be the last. But we are working on something, so stay tuned to our social media because we hope we're not going to be away for too much longer. But this is the Crash MotoGP podcast. My name is Harry Benjamin. Joining me, as always, is the Crash MotoGP editor, Pete McLaren, and former Grand Prix rider and British champion, Keith Ewan. Now, Keith, we've been away for a bit, and quite a lot's happened.
Well, I've torn the wallpaper off the walls in here because it's gone bonkers. It's gone absolutely mad. I mean, what a time to go monthly. Good Lord.
Timed that well, didn't we? Yeah.
If we'd gone monthly now with the summer break here, I could understand it. But going monthly with everything that's happened just recently. I mean, we got to start off at the top, or is it the bottom now? I'm not too sure. With Marc Marquez, haven't we? I mean, like the clattering he's been getting, the battering he's been getting, the lack of Honda progress, the fact that all Honda riders are injured. Well, apart from Takenakagami, actually, who seems to be riding really well at the moment. He's the only one that's something like able to ride a motorbike because he's fit enough. But the Marc Marquez thing, I mean, honestly, Saxon Ring, I watched the entire show from behind the settee. I couldn't watch it. It was just, it hurt me looking at the state that my commitment. Has there ever been, at any time in any, I'm old. I've never seen such commitment and dedication to getting more out of a motorbike than it's capable of, getting more out of himself than he's capable of at the moment. Marc Marquez, for me, is either a lunatic or an unbridled hero. Make your own minds up.
I mean, you're saying he's fallen 14 times this year, more than any other rider, and he's missed 3 rounds, hasn't he? I mean, that's the talking about the commitment. I mean, anyone that thinks he's not pushing, there it is. And the punishment that he got, as you say, Keith, that last one at the Saxon Ring on the high side, wasn't it, in the warm-up, which, really sort of, you saw him slumped over the guardrail, very un-Marc Marquez-like, but it just showed that it was a huge weekend, wasn't it? Because Saxon Ring is his track. He's always been able to win on anything, hasn't he? The previous 11 years, he'd won and won and won and won. So this was the racetrack that we were all kind of waiting to see what he could do. Could he overcome the bike yet again? And instead, what we saw was Marc falling off, and not really at the front either, was he? What was he, 7th on the grid, 11th in the sprint race? I think it was a real sort of reality sort of hit him as to just how difficult the situation is.
You've never seen such emotion, that's a fact. There was one time where you would never see pain on the likes of Marc Marquez. He would rather hide in the truck than show any. He'd dislocate his shoulder and he'd put it back in while he was riding on the back of a cameraman's bike on the way back to the paddock rather than show anybody any weakness anywhere. Marc Marquez's emotions have been on show. Clearly his name at the moment is taking a real slagging as well out there because, of course, there are other riders that get caught up in some of the shenanigans that Marc finds himself in. The emotional side of things, we see on social media a female that's now regularly shown with Marc on occasions. These are all things that when you're 30-year-old, you start to plateau. Your maturity, everything changes in your life as a motorbike racer. Whereas you could keep an absolute pinpoint focus on what you did. The only thing you did was ride a motorbike, off track, whatever it might have been, motocross. Everything you did was dedicated to those thousandths of a second, whether you're on the dirt or on the tarmac. All of a sudden, his focus is wider. It's much wider. He's got a social life. He's got a girlfriend. He's got 30 years old on board. He's got injuries he's getting over. He's getting trolled like mad here, there, and everywhere, which hurts. I've covered this before on the podcast. It's already the toughest guy you've got on social media, but it will just take a little bit of a sideways glance at some of them, and some of them get through. Some of them are bullets that get through the armor plate. And Marc Marquez is in a horrible position at the moment. Will he dump Honda? Got to be the question. That's got to be the crucial question. Will they let him go? Will he dive out of Honda at the end of this year and somewhere extra in 24? Got to say, I think they all need a different direction. I think Honda needs a different direction. I think that it will do them good to lose Marc Marquez for a while and to rebuild from scratch. It's not like Honda's an unknown company that might or might not make it good in the future. They will come back. Then you've got the wider thing about, are the Japanese, will we see the Japanese pull out of MotoGP? I don't think so en masse, but Suzuki have dropped it. We've talked about Yamaha. They're still failing massively. A little blip back from Quartararo at the weekend. Yeah, great, nice to see, but is it consistent? I doubt that very much indeed. Then you've got the Honda debacle. They brought Kalex. Can you imagine, being a Honda tech, taking the virtual smack in the face that their riders are running Kalex chassis? Have you ever heard anything like it from Honda ever before, where they've actually gone outside of the group to try something else? It's the good old gunpowder bloody remedy, isn't it? You just fire everything at it and see what comes out any good. But it's a scary time.
Surely, though, when it comes to his future, when you're swearing at your bike, that is surely, especially, in the Japanese culture and how they go racing, showing any kind of disdain in public is not a good look. Surely that's relationship breakdown. Where does he go, or does he call it quits completely?
Well, there's the other question. I mean, his granddad has wanted him packing him for God knows how long, hasn't he? I mean, has he done enough? Probably he has. I mean, quitting is in your mind. When you've had enough. When you don't want to do it to that level anymore. And I think as soon as Mark feels that dip, some riders make the mistake of carrying on. Some riders need the money. Some riders need the rush that you get from racing motorcycle. And believe me, and this I can speak from first-hand knowledge. I mean, it's quite funny when you hear commentators talking about stuff half the time, and they do not know about unless they have been motorcycle racers. It's never out of your system. It is never out of your system. Do you know what? Just as we get to that subject, all the hairs on my arms and my legs are standing up just thinking about it. And that's the effect that this has on you as an ex-motorbike racer. And the very thought of stopping, back in the day when I was 31, a long time ago, I was a year older than Mark when I finished racing. And even now, you still wake up sometimes in the morning thinking about gear ratios and jetting, which is quite funny.
Excuse me.
No one knows about jetting anymore. I'm an expert on jetting.
What the hell is jetting?
My boy, we had carburetors back in the day and reed valves and disc valves and stuff like that used to,
Jesus.
you had to get your carburation dead on, dead right, and your gearing dead on, dead. We only had 2,500 RPM to play with on it, even on the factory bikes back in the day. They chucked out nothing like the horsepower now, but you didn't have any of the management systems that you've got now. But forget about that. It's not about me, obviously. It's about where we're talking about where these guys. Well, I mean, back in my day is a great reference from a commentary point of view to see how things have moved on. But of course, in your head, they haven't. It's exactly the same thing. We're all sportsmen. You are looking for the nth degree. Back in the day, we used to look for tenths of a second. Now you're looking for thousandths of a second. Pretty soon, it's going to be 10,000ths of a second because that's how close it's been getting. Things move on, of course they do. But in your mind as a sportsman, and I dare say this is whatever sport you're in, you are focused on the next degree. Where do I make that step? The steps have got much smaller because everybody's got much closer in MotoGP, Moto3, Moto2. It's fantastic. I mean, I love the way that the personal improvement, the improvement of the motorbike, working as a massive team with all of the people in trying to get it better. So you can imagine what a brain muncher it is when you've got something like Honda where you just cannot put one foot right within the rules as they are at the moment. The rules are restrictive. You can't do what you want to do as an engineer. You cannot move it forward. There's not enough time in the winter. There's not enough testing to be able to be done because you're not allowed to. There's not enough money. I mean, Suzuki, surely that was money. No one's actually banged the table and said it, but surely that was money. They could not see the way forward for their 5-year contract that they just signed with MotoGP and Dorna. And maybe Yamaha, we've speculated over Yamaha for some time. We've heard that Eric Desains has been on, the European director of Yamaha, and basically blathered over the whole thing. Lynn Jarvis stands there pouting away like he does in the Yamaha pit garage. But there's still no discernible improvement compared with the competition around. And now Honda are in the same position. They're absolutely in dire straits to try and move it forward. The one man that could have done it for them is Marc Marquez, and it isn't working for him, and they might well lose him. I said before, when Alex Marquez went to Ducati, that was a door ajar. And if Marc Marquez really wants something like that, you got to bet that someone wants to give it him.
Who'd have thought that the most consistent rider within the Honda stable is Takenakagami?
Well, usually when you're a little bit slower, you can be consistent.
Yeah.
there is the point. There's no disrespect to Takenakagami. He's a great rider, but to be frank on you, he's never going to win a championship for them. That is for sure. Paul Espargaro might have been able to, Joan Mir maybe, Marc Marquez definitely. You've got some fairly shining people around you. So Takenakagami, great rider, great Moto2 rider, good mentality, and of course, conversing in your own first language as well is very helpful when you're developing motorbikes and when you're dealing with the factory. So there are a few things there, but Takenakagami, despite the fact I rate him very highly as a man and a motorcycle racer, he ain't gonna win a championship. Sorry.
And just talking about winning championships, I think this will be the fourth year, won't it, in a row that Mark hasn't won the title. Obviously, we know why, but he's been injured. But anyway, no rider has ever, I don't think, in the history of the sport, gone more than 3 years and won another title. I think Casey Stoner was that guy, 2007 with Ducati and then 2011 with Honda. That was the biggest gap between championships. Valentino Rossi got close in 2015, didn't he? But he didn't quite get there. But it just shows the situation that Mark's in and the urgency almost of what you're saying, Keith, about what does he do for his future, whether it's 24, whether there is a clause there or not, or whether it's 25. It's now or never almost to get that other title. And you've got to believe that he's come back from all these injuries to win. I think if he's going to throw the towel in, it'd be very hard to do that now, wouldn't it? But there is this frustration, as you mentioned, Harry, with the bike that we're seeing visibly. I mean, who does imagine that? It shows he wants this. He's done his part. I think that's how he feels. He's got that arm back working. He's sacrificed. He's had all those surgeries. He's ready. The bike isn't, as you say, Keith. And I think that's where there's this frustration. And he's got to make a decision. Do you stay loyal or do you go to somewhere else?
If you want my opinion on that, you dump him straight away. The balance is tipping. Marc Marquez's enthusiasm and his magic that he had magic in his hands. That guy could do things with a motorbike that no one else could do. We talk about aliens. We spoke about them before. An alien, what we mean by that, and anybody that's never heard us say it before, an alien is someone who does something on a motorcycle that even the other riders that are all around him go, huh? Where'd that come from? How'd you do that? And they all start to work on it. Marc Marquez is one of those guys. Valentino Rossi back in the day probably was. Lorenzo definitely had that touch on a motorcycle. That Casey Stoner is the alien above aliens. Danny Pedrosa was an alien, what he achieved on a motorbike as well. There are certain things that some of these guys do on a motorbike, the way that they ride them, the way that they manipulate them, they do something that no one else can see, can work out immediately, can't tell from the data. Even when you see the data, you couldn't do what Marc Marquez did with it. Ask Cal Crutchlow. It's a situation where once that's gone, Freddie Spencer, now there was one of the very first aliens. Freddie Spencer could do things on a motorbike. I'd never seen anything like it. I was lucky enough to share track with him and see what he was doing and go, hey, how does that work? I'm going to crash if I try that. And of course, Mark would get away with so many things for so long. Maybe the magic's gone. Maybe the time that he's had away, maybe the way that the motorcycle performs with him now and the way that his mentality is, it's never coming back. It's going to be, he might jump on a Ducati next year and win a world title. Maybe, because a Ducati is the bike at the moment. There's no doubt about it. It is the motorbike to be on. KTM are coming close. Aprilia have been close. There will be a shock. What have we got a job at Aprilia? Wow. And used it to its nth degree. I mean, Aprilia, there's an opportunity there. There's no doubt about it. But whether that factory is big enough to throw anything at it for someone like Mark, or whether he'd even be interested in it, I don't know. What would you do if you were Mark? He basically is an incredible competitor. Would he want to do that? Would he, at 30 years old, 31 years old, want to rebuild that? You mentioned it, Peter, Valentino Rossi. How long had he been trying to get that 10th world title? Having said that, I think Valentino was too old. I think he'd gone past his sell-by date. He got the old yellow label stuck on him and was by the till half price by the time he got to that particular point in his career. Whereas Marquez still has a few years, if he can find that extra determination and extra motivation to get over where he is now. But I don't think it's with Honda.
Well, that is the biggest question, isn't it? Where does he go? What does the future lie? And we have got a bit of a break now before the next race, so maybe we might get some answers. Who knows? In this summer break, or maybe he'll certainly be debating what his future holds.
Sure.
Speaking of, though, Pete, drivers being I said it. Oh, you can tell it's been a while. You can tell it's been a while. Riders. You can tell. Riders being outspoken. Speaking of, it's flustered me now. Damn it! Riders being
just got to put the money in the swear jar now.
Riders being outspoken and not liking their bikes and moaning. Jack Miller has called them out for it, really, hasn't he? And he's actually called MotoGP out a little bit as well, complaining about ticket prices and all this kind of thing. He's not having it at the moment, is Miller?
No, that's it. I mean, again, we're coming on talking about Mark. Now, obviously, there was Jack talking about Mark grabbed all the headlines. He made clear, it was Mark. It wasn't just Mark. It was also other riders. But, you can see what Jack's saying there. He's saying, look, if you want a bike that's not working, you've got to make it work. It's not just, you can't just complain about it.
We all wrote KTM off right at the start of the year, didn't we?
hey, we weren't alone. The whole world, apart from KTM, had written them off.
Yeah, and in fairness, I had an interview with Brad Binder at Mugello, and he said, look, we were struggling in the winter. Because I said, you were really, we were really struggling. That wasn't, you guys didn't get that completely wrong. We were struggling and we got it right. So, it just shows that what they've done with that bike and they continue to do with that bike. I think that's the impressive thing with the KTM is they're ticking off weaknesses almost every week. I mean, that they sorted that thing, out of the winter testing, got it on the right track. Then Jack went to Mugello and he was having trouble with the fast corners where you just roll off the throttle, he was saying, Keith. Not where you don't jump on the brakes, but you just roll off a bit and turn. Couldn't get it to turn. By the time we got to Sachsenring a week later, they'd fixed that. Then you had Brad Binder. He was struggling with the front locking. The front locking, which for mere mortals, the thought of a front wheel locking is just terrifying to someone like me. But they fixed that for Assen on the Sunday. So they were that's the impressive thing at KTM is that they are going through their list. And when you talk about the Hondas and the Yamahas, and we're seeing things, they bring in new parts, they appear for a few weeks, and then they start bringing the old parts back. Even the Kalex we saw, they were going back to the old Honda chassis at Assen at the weekend. So again, there's a difference there of a company that's moving forward and sort of ticking things off. And the Japanese that seem to be sort of going backwards and forwards again. Also talk about technical concessions, which we've brought up here in the past. Could that be the saviour, if you like, of Honda and Yamaha, giving them some more time to test? Because with this race weekend format, there's no time for testing. And it just looks like all the things that Keith brought up about keeping them in the sport, not letting them go the way that Suzuki went. I think this might not be coming from Honda and Yamaha, but actually people just, let's say, with an overall view of the sport going, we need all these factories to stay involved. Maybe the concession system does need to be tweaked. And we've said that, that would be a good way of keeping all the factories together. Could that work for them next year? Who knows? Apparently it hasn't officially been discussed, but we'll have to wait and see. But on Jack and the moaning, that was the thing that he made. He was sort of blasted all this out at the end of one of his debriefs. What he's saying, of course, you can understand it. He's saying that it's no good throwing your manufacturer under the bus, if you like. On the other hand, if you look at, let's take Yamaha and Honda, this is not just a couple of races they've been struggling. This is now coming on for several seasons, isn't it, where they're not making progress. And so at what point, and Keith mentioned Valentino Rossi, he was always the expert, wasn't he, of what words to say and when to sort of ignite a reaction from Japan. He knew the words that were, whether he felt that they were just not investing enough in the project. This is when he was at his peak, of course. He knew what to say in public that would get them, what's Rossi said about the Yamaha here, and it would get the bosses focused and putting that effort in again. And so there is a time and a place when I think you do have to criticize your manufacturer in public. It's not done by accident, and I don't believe that the guys that have been doing it, it's been an accident. I think it's almost desperation. We waited, we're not seeing results. Let's apply some public pressure.
Well, the artist of public pressure was Barry Sheene, going back to the icon, the original icon. And Mr. Sheene would turn up when riding for Suzuki with a Yamaha T-shirt on at a public event, or a Bultaco T-shirt. Of course, Bultaco was because his dad. That's why his dad was called Franco, because he worked for Bulto back in the day. But it was all. Sheene would turn up at the Night with the Stars or whatever. It is one of the biggest social gatherings of all your punters and motorcycle racers in the UK, wearing a Yamaha t-shirt. It just used to completely piss off Suzuki, you might imagine. So he's pretty good at it. Jack, now I love Jack Miller. I think Jack Miller, and he's got a very valid point. The fact he spoke it publicly is ill-advised, in my view, because they've got long memories, and the trouble is you've got short careers, but there's a long memory going on behind the scenes, of course. So Jack, but having said that, Jack's been snubbed by Ducati, so at the end of the day, he doesn't care about Ducati. Honda, he's never going to ride a Honda anyway, so he doesn't particularly care about what they think. And on goes Jack. And he's got a very good point, getting back to that, in that you win as a team, you lose as a team. You know, at the end of the day, you're working towards moving that whole manufacturer and your career forwards in the same direction. As soon as you start, pulling in different bloody directions, that's when you get an even worse. It's not a cohesive effort to make it the best it can possibly be. And so Jack's right in as much as you should shut up and ride the thing. But perhaps you don't say that about your colleagues that you're going to be standing in the paddock with and maybe having a beer or not down in the beer, but in the tent. But another thing that was amusing me, and you touched on it, Pete, I had to think then for a moment because my old brain has to. You hit so many points, Pete, that I suddenly have to pick out ones and I can't write them down fast enough. But KTM seemed to be struggling through the fast stuff at Sachsenring. The Ralph Waldman, the waterfall, turn 11 at Sachsenring, which is where you drop off the edge of a cliff. Clearly, the KTM was having a bit of a struggle through the fast point. The commentators were making a big deal of it and all the rest of it. And we got to the next round, and this is picking up on your point. We got to the next round, of course, and the commentators are going, KTM are struggling through all the fast stuff like they were at Sachsenring. No, they weren't. They dialed it in. They were really quick through some of the fast stuff. And I remember thinking, and it took 2 days of commentary before everybody started to realise that, no, KTM have made whatever tweaks, whatever adjustments, whether it was a rider had made the changes or whether the techs had made the changes, I don't know. But you're right, KTM are very, very smart how they pick up on the tiny nuances and move it forward for the next time. They don't make the same mistake twice, it would seem, that's for sure. Marc Marquez to KTM. Wow.
Oh, well,
I love the lineup they've got already. I love Jack Binder and Brad, Jack Binder.
The ultimate combo.
I mean, they are fantastic, aren't they? They're brilliant. Hang on a minute. Nick Morgan calls. I'll have to ignore him. Nicholas Edward Morgan of MSS Kawasaki, as now it is, from Essex, of course.
Of course.
Calling to give me some grief over something, I'm sure. Or do I owe him money? Anyway.
You haven't done a podcast in a month. What else is there to say? What's he going to call you up on? So much.
We got so much.
So Binder, as you say, up in fourth in the championship at the moment. Miller in seventh, and KTM second in the constructors, ahead of Aprilia. And then you have your Japanese manufacturers, Honda ahead of Yamaha.
We talked about the Europeans now ruling the roost. Do you remember a bloke called Gary Taylor used to run the HP Suzuki team, the 500cc Grand Prix team out of somewhere south of Croydon? And he had some stickers made somewhat cheekily when Honda came in and they all wiped up, and then Honda whinged and whined because they weren't doing any winning. So he had some stickers made that said, Honda enters, Honda wins, Honda loses, Honda quits. And these things were stuck all over the motorcycle shows around the world and just kept appearing on Honda monitors, on Honda motorbikes, these stickers that GT had made up. GT was the one who got the blame for it. Whether Gary Taylor did make them up or not, it's all a legendary team manager, Gary Taylor. And but are we going to see the same thing? Honda, like they did back then.
Let's hope not. Let's hope we get another team coming in place. Being the positive optimist.
That's it. I think there's the test coming up at Misano is going to be a big one. This is almost the worrying thing, is that both Honda and Yamaha are already looking at next year, and this is a problem, as you say, Keith, with the development of the rules that you're almost just over a third of the way through the season, and you're looking at next year because you can't change your engine and things like that. So the Misano test, it sounds like there'll be a prototype for the next year's Honda. That'll be the first thing, and that'll be the Ken Kawai.
At some point, Pete, you've got to say, enough. We are spending the rest of this year working on little tweaks that we know is going to benefit the program for next year, whatever they might be within the rules. But, you've got to be out testing. They've got to be testing on test tracks somewhere. But the problem is, with a 40-race series that we got now, the riders are all knackered or injured. Every rider by this time of the year is looking forward to the summer break. And we've not even got to the business end of the year yet. This next tranche of motorcycle races are horrendous on your mind, body, and absolute soul. There are going to be people that have got mental issues by the time we get halfway through this long haul stuff when we get back after the summer break. It is going to be the most relentlessly punishing time in Grand Prix motorcycle racing that there has ever been. It's going to be, we're going to have managers, techs, runners, everybody, TV broadcasters, people that are going to be so knackered halfway through this that they're not going to make the rest of the season. And that's without injuries to riders. And with everything being so close as we get towards all this as well, it's all very well working on different continents, as they're all going to do, working in some of the most punishing conditions. It's going to be, burnout is going to be there. Burnout is going to be there across the board, from the lowest person in a team to the rider.
Well, you mentioned the word punishments there, and the T word has come back into play. Not that it ever falls far away from motorsport in general. Track limits, once again in the headlines. And Binder's been quite vocal. Obviously, Jorge Martin not being affected. What are we making of this debacle?
It's not track limits, Harry. It's not track limits. It's the way it's bloody administered. It's the way it's officiated. It's not track limits. Track limits is a track limit. It's dead simple. But when you blow someone away that's just lost the front in a massive way, we're talking Assen here, into the chicane, loses the front, there's no option but to go across there. And what bloody rider can work out whether you've given away a second? Who can do that? You don't have a bloody stopwatch in your head to think, I must have given away a second by now, so therefore I'll be okay, I won't get a penalty. So he copped his penalty, and then you get another, how can you not see that someone has run on the greens through a long lap penalty? I don't understand how the officiate. I don't get it. I think that we are in that situation where race direction needs a serious look at the stewards again.
That's
said
one
that
thing so many times this year.
that was the Acosta penalty, was it?
Yeah, the long lap penalty that Acosta. Yeah. Acosta did a long lap penalty and clearly, visually, ran onto the green with both wheels. And that is not completing your long lap penalty correctly. Admittedly, that particular long lap penalty is hugely long, and it's got a massive dip on the way out, on the way back onto the track as well. So you've got several hoops to jump through on a very difficult long lap penalty. But at the end of the day, the rules are you've got to stay within the white lines. You can't drift off onto the green stuff to maximise your line or whatever it is.
I think they're going to have to put the sensors on it, aren't they? I think what emerged from this is that it is only a visual thing. And there was a CCTV, wasn't there, of a different angle. And so you had the TV angle, the CCTV, but nothing that actually sensor-wise sort of pinged and said you've crossed the line.
You need common sensor, not a new bloody sensor. You just need to, somebody to, it looked clear to all concerned. The penalty through the chicane to me was over-egging it. The problem you've got is if you don't penalise one person for doing it, then you leave the door open. It just seems that our rules are still loose enough for interpretation sometimes, which is just wrong completely. But the fact is that you're supposed to lose a certain amount of, if you've gone off onto the green stuff, it's there instead of grass to make the safety angle okay. But therefore you have to lose a certain amount if you've gone across the green. Well, the fact that he lost, a couple of places, lost the front end, it all but crashed, but actually didn't lose the amount of time that probably was designated that he should have done, still seems completely wrong to me because, I don't know, he's a motorbike racer and he looked like he crashed to me. He saved it, he lost places, it spoilt his momentum and he still came back but lost the podium, which if I'd have been Binder, I'd have been wrecking.
Losing a podium after the checkered flag twice with the same track limit, same point. Unbelievable, wasn't it? And when it flashed up on the Sunday, you thought, there's a timing issue, there's a glitch. It can't possibly be Brad Binder demoted again, and yet exactly the same corner by a few millimeters, and that's all it takes. And the problem is he didn't, Seiki, the only thing he could have done in theory is to have backed off again, but he didn't even know that he'd done it.
Well, I think as well, there's two issues here, aren't there? That you've got to be within the rules, and the rules have got to be applied consistently. Fair enough. but we also owe it to the fans. When Quartararo rolled round to get that third position, which was great to see Quartararo on the sprint podium, and they showed the reason why up on the screens around Assen. Bloody hell, the fans definitely signified their dissatisfaction with that decision. And I think that's the secondary point in this. It's all very well having these rules, and of course they've got to be consistently applied and so on and so forth. But it's a show for the fans. They are paying big money to come and watch proper racing, not to suddenly have checkered flag and then a rearrangement of the podium because someone went a millimetre over or whatever it might have been. And we've seen it so many times. It is what it is, but it definitely needs a bloody good shake-up for next year. We shouldn't talk about it anymore.
All right, done. We've had many a podcast where track limits and penalties and
you don't want to
stewards
finish our final
come up.
podcast on such negativity.
No, we're going to turn to positivity and go down a step to Moto 2 because Jake Dixon finally did it, Keith.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's funny. It evokes such personal... you've wanted him to do it for so long, since Le Mans, when he should have won at Le Mans a few years ago and chucked it away in the final corner. Jake has had to get over that, get that monkey off your back and get on and do it. And he looked class all the way through the weekend. He worked really, really maturely through the race and didn't get rattled by his positioning early on in the race and obviously picked it off perfectly. But what it did for me was it made me think about how we treat riders that are coming through. Now we're all over Jake, this, and he's the great hope for British motorcycle racing and all the rest of it. And being old, I actually had a little think about that for a moment or two and just tried not to get too carried away with it. But Moto 2 alone, we had the former world supersport champion, Sam Lowes, who came into Moto 2, and he's a winning man in Moto 2, and he was the great hope for Britain, and he's 30-something years old now, so kind of he's been getting a lot of stick lately, and people have kind of a bit dismissive about Sam behind the scenes a little bit, and I think unfairly so. And he'll probably disappear off into World Superbikes, next year. So Sam will have had his career in Grand Prix. He's won a few Grand Prix. He's been Britain's hope of the moment. And then you step back just a little bit further than that, and there was the man that beats them all effectively in Scott Redding. Redding. If you go back to winning a 125 Grand Prix in Moto 2. I mean, he was a superb rider in Moto 2. He should have won the championship. He was very unlucky not to win the championship. And he's a guy that everyone kind of dismisses now, and he's across in World Superbikes and they forget about him. And you're looking to see what is going to make the difference with Jake Dixon. What is going to make the difference? He's had that win. Now everybody's saying, well, that will be it. Now he's got that one out of the way. He'll be able to win them all and maybe be a champion. Well, will he? Will he be the next one that's in the line of riders that have won a GP? Go to McPhee in Moto 3 if you like. Although I never really thought that John McPhee was going to win a world title, but certainly a few more Moto 3 races, there's no doubt about it. Will Jake, at 27 years old, the things that are significant for me, let me try and answer my own question. The things that are significant for me is Sarah, his missus, he's got a child already. The kind of things that we were talking about a moment ago, or alluding to a moment ago with Marc Marquez, he's got those things ahead of him. Jake Dixon has got those things behind him, and he's still 27 years old. So he's gone through that kind of maturity stage that you need to get done. It's not really going to interfere with his racing moving forward, whereas the likes of Marquez, perhaps those kind of things will add to his pressure to one side. Perhaps he'll look to one side regarding that. So I think Jake Dixon is well placed, but now he needs to really put that together. Win at Silverstone. Summer break. He's gone into the summer break with a win. He's going to come out of the summer break. We're going to be at the British Grand Prix. 100,000 fans and everybody mobbing him. Now, for some riders, your home Grand Prix, you win or choke. It's an awful situation, but your home Grand Prix, and I remember this so well, you've got your family there, you've got your friends there, you've got your fans there, you've got every man and his dog coming out the cupboard trying to get passes off you to be there with you and to be swept along by your momentum and your fame and fortune. and you want to go and bury yourself somewhere, on your own, and then stick your head in the sand and try and concentrate on the job in hand. But you've got all these other duties that you've got to do at home Grand Prix, at your own Grand Prix. And the British Grand Prix is probably, not just for British riders, it's probably the biggest Grand Prix of the year. I'd say that advisedly. It's on a track that's fast and flowing. It's one that you want to win. It's kind of like the Monaco of Formula One. Silverstone, despite the fact that Silverstone's a car track and they kind of don't quite give MotoGP everything, because obviously they're all spent out on Formula One and the like, and Formula One's where they make the most money. But it is the biggest event of the year, and it's one that Dorna want to see successful. They want to see a British rider be successful there, because the British marketplace in Grand Prix is not as buoyant as it might be in, say, Italy or certainly in Spain, and they're wanting to make sure that marketplace is enhanced. Silverstone are doing their best, I have to say. They've got great headliners on this year from a band's point of view. If you're staying for the 3 days, you are going to be entertained. It's fantastic. But what we really need is Jake Dixon to come out of the summer break in the way that he came into the summer break, as a Grand Prix winner. And that really will launch MotoGP again in this country. And maybe Jake Dixon will move into a MotoGP team again, and we'll see something a little bit special from him moving on forwards. He's proved he can do it. He's come from adversity before. Maybe he can manage that again.
Fabio Quartararo, good friend of Jake, isn't he? He was asked about that win, and he said, Fabio said, I said to my mechanic, look, if he doesn't win this one, he's never going to win. Because, as you say, Keith, he was on such good form all weekend. And, he put it together, the race. Bit of a close pass with Ayagura, wasn't it? Ayagura also back on form, we should say. Welcome return to the front after his injury troubles. But, yeah, you saw what it meant to Jake afterwards. That getting that win, as you say, Keith, he's been there really since that mistake at Le Mans a few years back, that he's just been hanging around at the back of his head. And, he's already saying that he's talking to MotoGP teams. The British market, obviously, you've got BT Sport, that they want a British rider. There's all that momentum and pressure there. And, people have gone, going to MotoGP without a win in Moto2 is a bit of a step, isn't it? But, there's a lot of riders that have won between 1, 2 or 3 Moto2 races, not least of Fabio Quartararo. So he's taken a big step towards proving he can do it. And as you say, Keith, I think these next few races are crucial, because if he can now add another victory, he's third in the championship, isn't he? He's a bit far from Arbolino and Acosta, but completely out of it. But still, another couple of wins. And to be honest, he's ticked every box, I think. It's his 5th year in Moto2, I think now, isn't it? He needs to move up. And if he can build this momentum, get himself into MotoGP, I think now's the time, for the reasons that you say, Keith.
He's the real deal, personality-wise as well. He's got that Barry Sheen kind of way about him. I love that. I mean, he's got that James Hunt without the posh voice, obviously. He's got that kind of Barry Sheen feel about him. Bit of a Jack the Lad, swagger, Mickey take. But underneath there is always a steely professional sportsman. Don't be fooled by the veneer that's out front. Enjoy it, because he is Jack the Lad and he is good fun. But believe me, he's got what it takes to move it on. And I think Jake... Sorry, I just swallowed a fly.
Lovely. I was wondering what you were doing there.
I felt it go in my mouth and I just pulled it out.
There's your appetizer.
Those of you that are not watching, only listening, flies don't taste that nice. We eat them in Asia, but not over here in Britain. We enjoy them in Asia, come to think of it.
Oh, God.
So there you go. I mean, the problem you've got in MotoGP is that, well, you've got the Acosta factor. We mentioned him about not getting the penalty a bit earlier on. You've got the Acosta factor. KTM at the moment are spoiled for riches of talent. Who's going to get the push out of KTM for Acosta to take a place? That's going to happen for sure. There's no way that they've got to. They're going to have to let somebody go. Other teams are going to be looking at rivals that have got talent that maybe they can bring on. So it's not an easy marketplace for Jake, that's for sure. Frankie Carcetti, who is originally Suzuki technician, manager for Jake Dixon as well. He and Dorna and Urta put that deal together to get him into Moto2 and to keep him in Moto2. And basically, Dorna have been fronting up money for the likes of Jake Dixon for the last few years to make sure that the team keep him on. And now he's fulfilled that with this win. If he can just cap that with a couple more this year, that justification will have been well founded at the end of the day. And blimey, I wish Jake well. I mean, because he is the real deal. If he becomes a consistent Grand Prix winner with his kind of personality, he will be the kind. He'll be selling Brute. Splash it all over, Henry. Anybody old enough to remember that advert?
Nope.
I sent you a bottle of Brute. I must have some here somewhere.
Oh well, Dixon is
Barry Sheen and Henry Cooper used to have an advert on the TV, on the telebox, for men's perfume. I know you bloody use it because I can smell it from here.
You looking at me or Pete?
Looking at you, Barry. You look like a groomed man. Pete looks like a worn-out man.
When you've got a beard, you have to keep it well groomed. Yeah. I use a bit of perfume. What was it called? What was it? What was the?
It was Brute.
Brute. That was
Brute.
What, Eau de Brute or whatever.
Eau de Brute. Splash it all over. He used to say, Henry Cooper, splash it all over, Henry. And I think,
oh Jesus,
didn't Stephanie used to have a part in that as well? Barry's missus.
What was it? Leather and sweat? Was that the scent?
Hey, I don't want any condescending talk from you bloody four-wheeler types, the well-perfumed bubble you live in.
You're the one who brought up James Hunt.
It's only because 2 nights ago I watched Rush.
What? Not for the first time, surely.
No.
No, yeah, it's a good film. Very good film.
Do you know what? The great thing about getting old, Harry, and you're going to go there one day, you've watched the film a dozen times, but by the time you want to watch it again, you've forgotten it. Quite good.
I can't wait. Dixon. Back to Dixon. He's third now in the championship, 40-something points off of Tony Arbolino. Then it is the wonder kid, the dream, Pedro Acosta in second, who looks like he's got his pick of the bunch when it comes into MotoGP. Lopez Canet, the top 5. That's how Moto 2 is looking. Should we have a gander at Moto 3? We may as well, as we're here. Pete, it was a bit of a hit for Daniel Holgado last time out. He still has the championship lead, but Jaume Masia and Ayumu Sasaki not far off him.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise, wasn't it? Yeah, Holgado came in. He's been on a cracking run, hasn't he? Moving to Tech 2, he won their home race, didn't he? Carried the momentum on. And then, just disaster. It literally qualified last, and he got caught out in qualifying. And then you think it couldn't get any worse. He then has a first lap accident in the race, and so doesn't score any points. But he's still there. He's got that. Well, he had that buffer, so it means that he is still leading the championship. But as you say, Masia on a rare win for Honda really this year. That the track seemed to suit the Honda a bit more and got him up there. But yeah, we'll have to see in the second half of the year. I think Holgado. He's you could see afterwards that the team rushing around to try and be cool on all that experience they've got in Tech 2 and just sort of reassuring him, look, this is one race and this is not it. There's a long way to go. But if he keeps his head, he's the man to beat still.
Can't argue with that, Pete. I've got to say, Jaume Masia was my man at the start of the season, but and it looked to me from what I'd seen in early season stuff like the Honda might have made a step over the KTM, but it's been completely the opposite. I think there's a lesson to be learned here from our KTM conversations earlier on about MotoGP and now Moto3. Ignore anything that's gone on in testing. Wait till we get to the races.
Literally. Well, that's how Moto 2, Moto 3 look. Now, before I come back up to MotoGP, do you remember Stephen Michel on their MotoGP adventure in retirement that Keith gave them a lovely little guide? Well, they've been keeping us up to date, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see all the images they've been sending us. Back in this is about the start of June, they were out in force. They were able to they met Gigi, also Dominique Agata, Ricciardo. Rimini were great as well. Then they were off to Mugello. And then they sent us some more pictures on the train, taking their way around. They took a taxi ride to the track in Mugello. This is how we're going to go tomorrow. And they've sent us a lovely picture of sort of a Vespa type thing. That's they've never ridden anything that small before, but it's the only thing that was available. So Steve and Michelle, and the last update they gave us is that they are done for now. This was just a couple of days ago. It was an amazing experience. 100 miles. It was a little Vespa. Italy won us over and wore us out. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that we're still here in Europe. We're back to Barcelona for the weekend, heading to Paris and then San Martin. Then back to Mexico. We're considerably more fit because of all the footwork we've done. Luckily, we packed super light. And they're already plotting their trip to England, which I hope includes a Silverstone visit. If it doesn't, you're mad. But Stephen, Michelle, all down to you, Keith. That nice bit of tourism advice there.
Well, I'm glad they enjoyed it. I mean, I wish I was doing it as well.
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of people will get jealous of that. Thank you for keeping us up to date with your journey as well. Really appreciate it. And keep us up to date. We'd love to see where you head off to next, and then if you meet any famous names, get a picture with Keith and frame it.
Well, we'll do some more. We'll do some coordinated travel stuff when we reappear after whatever happens in our monthly.
Yes.
If this all dies a death here, we'll have all sorts of extra things.
Yeah,
when we come
don't
back.
You worry. We're not going to go down without a fight. We may not be on this particular platform, but we will be lurking around. So give us all a follow on social media. So that's where you'll be able to see what we're up to. Well, look, before we go, then, shall we give our sort of, I don't want to say a prediction, but Pecco Bagnaia, is he going to win?
He's the most consistent. He's looking very, very good, hasn't he? He's had his little dip in the middle. He looks confident. Bezzecchi is fantastic at the moment, so I think that there's going to be a duel. I love the dynamic at the moment. The I don't know what you call it, the green room, the after room, when they're sort of washing themselves down and getting ready for the
cool
podium.
down
I
room.
just love the banter that's between all of them at the moment. I think MotoGP is in such a fantastic place regarding, Jack Miller firing off at them all and people finding sight. I just think it's personalities in MotoGP, and it's what we need. We need that kind of, and we need television to be promoting that so we can see that consistently. I mean, of course, Silverstone is the first TNT broadcast. BT Sport is no more. BT Sport's no more. Eurosport will be no more. Discovery Sport will be no more. It all comes under the TNT banner. Now, how that plays out for everyone at home and around Europe, we're going to have to find out. It ain't going to get any cheaper. Let's see what we get for value for money and whether we start getting some of these personalities. The sort of rather twee trackside interview with the odd rider for 10 seconds and the standard questions and all the rest of it. I'm fed up with all of that. I want a bit more of it. I want to see them at home. I want to, go out on a night out with them. I want to see them on the piss. Let's have and they do, on occasions. It's something that you don't see much of, but there are lots of different things that you can get into your television broadcast, and I hope TNT and Dorna and everybody get their heads together and we get that kind of coverage. I think the coverage has been brilliant for the last 10 years. BT Sport particularly have covered it extremely well, but I think we've done that model. It now needs to move on. I think there is a much bigger audience out there that can be brought forward. Younger audience, digital audience, the kind of audience that make you look old, Harry. They're out there, and I think they need bringing.
I'm 26. That's over the hill now.
Hey, I'm quite a bit older than you, and I still can't grow a beard.
How do you think Pete feels?
He's going to grow a beard, and he did. Oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, careful. It's come out of place. Lovely stuff.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my Keith Hewin to be delivered.
A whole toupee division.
I'll find you one.
Oh, well.
I was going to have a set of headphones done, Harry, like you've got there, that you've got on with hair attached.
You never take them off.
By the way, this is my own hair. There's just not much of it, and it's well placed.
It is well placed.
It's like that old joke, isn't it? In MotoGP, the fans know the names of all the riders, and it used to be said in Germany, particularly in World Superbikes, the riders know the names of all the fans. That's a bit like my hair.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They've all got numbers.
And on that note, I think we're going to end it there, guys. Pete, any final words about anything? I don't know. Feel free.
About anything? Well, it's been a pleasure with you guys, working with you guys. And these, we all got thrown together, didn't we? A couple
really
of years
did.
ago.
I didn't know who Keith Hewin was.
Well, you
Imagine how I felt
Googling
about Harry
Keith, didn't
Benjamin.
Yeah. Somehow it worked. Jesus, who'd have thought it, eh? Not me.
Yeah, no, it's been great fun. Professionally, personally, it's been a lot of fun. So thank you guys for that. And yes,
beers at Silverstone,
I can
then.
safely say,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
beers at Silverstone, yeah. Oh, definitely. And thanks for all the questions the listeners have sent in, and to Adrian, our long-suffering editor,
Absolutely. We have to give a
for,
shout out to Adrian.
patching together all of our technical difficulties
He
every now
spent
and then.
hours piecing
So,
together
yeah.
some shocking technical infringements for our podcast. So well done to Adrian for that. Thank you for all your hard work. And yeah, I think you've said it all, really. Thank you to the listeners. We've got to thank Keith as well for agreeing to even be a part of this, Keith. So thanks for giving up your time. Really appreciate it.
Mate, I have to say that the dynamic between us, I've enjoyed it. It's been good fun. I mean, me being a little elderly and you being a little younger, and Pete in the middle trying to make sure there's some semblance of journalistic bloody acumen in there, has been quite good fun to be involved in. And the highest accolade I think that we've been given as a trio, if you like, as a group, came from one of the very high ups in the MotoGP paddock about how much that they enjoy listening to our podcast as well, which, blowing a bit of smoke up our own kilts is not always that pretty, but that one particular compliment means so much to the likes of us, because we work in that environment. And if you're getting it reasonably entertained with a reasonable amount of accurate information, then that's all you can really wish for. And thank you very much to anybody in the paddock who listens to this and supports us from within the paddock as well. Obviously, for everyone that subscribes to it, that maybe is outside of the paddock, but from all of us that are inside the paddock, to have your peers appreciate some of the work that you do, there is no higher accolade than that. It doesn't matter about money when it comes to that kind of thing, does it? If we can be entertaining and informative, then that really is, you've got close to cracking it. We'll try harder next time so we get there, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that whole idea of being inside and outside the paddock, we hope we've been able to sort of blend that to those who are outside the paddock, so you can feel like you are in there and you're knowing everything that's going on. So we really appreciate having you along for the ride. Thank you for all the support. As we've said and hinted and intimated, this might not be the end, so keep a lookout, but this is the end of the Crash MotoGP podcast. But we are working on something, so keep an eye out. But anyway, for the last time, this has been the Crash MotoGP podcast. Thank you very much for listening. I'm not going to say like and subscribe because we're off now. So my thanks to Pete McLaren, Keith Ewan. I've been Harry Benjamin. Enjoy the rest of the season, and we'll hope to be back soon. Bye-bye.